Alright, I decided to go with a simpler design instead, at least for the thin plywood. Instead of going for the half lap, I decided just to go with simple puzzle pieces and just cut them out completely. So I made this pattern and started tracing it out, and I'm not really that happy with it because when we cut it out, these puzzle pieces that are sticking out, well, they're kind of a weird shape, they're hard, they got a lot of curves to them, but the main thing that I don't like is the thickness here. I just think that this is not going to be that rigid to be able to support. They might break off, who knows what. So I'm going to abandon this design, and I went with an even simpler design. So I just cut an angle out of here, and I used this to make this angle here. So this time I'm going to go with, instead of this round type design, I'm going to go with more of almost like a trapezoid design. So it'll just come straight up, it'll have curved corners, and then here it will come at an angle. So this still gives us the puzzle piece design, but the distance here to here is much wider now because this side comes straight down instead of coming in at an angle. When it comes in at an angle, it makes that neck here very narrow. So I think by bringing this straight down, we'll get a stronger puzzle piece. So let me draw this out and see what it looks like. Well, I first need to cut it out of the cardboard here and then transfer this pattern onto the plywood and see what that design looks like. I like this a lot better. It has a very clean look to it. I also like how the edges are thick enough that they're not going to break off. That was one of the problems with the previous pattern, is we ended up on one of the ends with a piece that had a very narrow connection to it, and I'm always worried that it's going to break off. So I like how both ends, this is a nice thick piece here, and down on this end is even a thicker piece down here. But the overall pattern, I like it. We still have the interlocking mechanism because it gets wider than it is narrower here, but at any point, the narrowest point is still wide enough that I think it's going to be very strong. Alright, so the next step is to cut this out with a 1/8 inch bit, just like before. And I think this will be a lot simpler of a design. The cut has been made. We have a nice even cut. I think this turned out even better than the last time. Maybe I'm getting better, or most likely it was just because there are a lot more straight edges, less curves, and it's a simpler pattern. I was able to use the trim router again with the 1/8 inch spiral cut bit on the end. And it doesn't matter if when I was cutting this I didn't follow the lines perfectly. Like here's a little bit of a wobble, because this is a match set. So if it wobbles down this side, then both patterns are going to follow that wobble a bit. I'll still sand this up a little bit and clear it up, and anywhere there's a wobble, that'll just be a little bit of a wider gap in the final joint. The main thing that needs to be lined up later when we actually use these patterns to cut the plywood to be joined is that we line up the center line on each half of the pattern, and that center line is what will then give us the correct gap between the two halves. So they'll separate like that, and we just line up these center lines on each side with the joint or the edge of the plywood that we want to join together, and it should then lock together. After sanding and smoothing the two templates, I used them to cut out a test piece of plywood for each one. So here I cut this one out with this template, and I cut this piece of plywood out using this template. And now let's see how they fit together. Let's move the two templates out of the way. And start right here. The alignment looks good so far. Nice snug fit. Yeah, all the way down here. I like there's a tiny bit of a gap. A little more so in some places. Other places it's coming up a bit right, kind of rubbing a bit. That's fine. But yeah, all along here, I think this is going to be the method that we're going to use to join the thin plywood, at least, together into longer sheets for building the boat. I'm going to call this a success.